Hi everyone, welcome to Small Talk with the Etsy Collective, a session in which we bring you closer to change makers and industry experts for insights and a lot of inspiration. I'm Sunanda Krishna and I'm the PR and marketing lead for Etsy in India. I don't think I'll be able to contain my excitement anymore as I introduce our special guest today, India's most celebrated architect, Dr. Balkrishna V. Doshi, to this session. Dr. Doshi is the first Indian to receive the prestigious Pritzker Architecture Prize, and in today's session, we'll get to know the person behind the magician, his philosophy and school of thought, and also how he believes an architect must not only know about buildings, but it is about how one perceives the world. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. I also wanted to thank Ms. Khushnu, who is Dr. Doshi's granddaughter and an architect herself, and she's helped us in coordinating this session. So thank you so much for all your help today.
But she is my collaborator and my advisor.
That's great.
Necessary to note.
Yes. Thank you so much. I want to welcome Himanshu Vardhan, who's the Managing Director for Etsy in India, and he's the driving force behind this initiative. Thank you so much, Himanshu, for joining us today. Today's session will be moderated by the amazing Supriya Dravid. Supriya, as you know, is the former editor of Elle India, and under her directive, the magazine became more inclusive and diverse in its focus and coverage, becoming the only magazine to feature global icons like Oprah Winfrey and Tan France on its covers. Before Elle, she had stints at Harper's Bazaar and India Today. Supriya is also the author of A Cool Dark Place, which is a novel of fiction that was published by Penguin Random House. Supriya will be speaking to Dr. Doshi about his work and the impact it has created in India and the world over. Welcome so much, Supriya, and thank you so much for this session.
Thank you, Sunanda. Happy to be here.
Thanks a lot. Before we start the conversation, I wanted to inform Dr. Doshi and everyone in the audience that this event that we have, our beloved Etsy Collective, which is also now known as Small Talk with the Etsy Collective, has completed 2 years and 100 sessions. And we have a tiny little video to celebrate this milestone. And I would just request Radhika to play it for the audience.
Hello everybody, we have completed 2 years of Etsy Collective. It has just been an incredible way for people to connect. Etsy's mission is keep commerce human, and I believe that Etsy Collective has been able to work towards that mission and serve that mission in a very effective manner. Here's to 2 years of Etsy Collective and many more to come. I believe that this is absolutely the best platform to keep commerce human, in addition to being online on Etsy.com.
Congratulations Etsy on completing 2 years of the collective.
This is an amazing milestone. Kudos to you guys. Congratulations.
Has to be the first collective which we had in Bikaner House. I was invited to the event and I absolutely loved it.
I so vividly remember that when I walked into the room, there was so much energy, there was so much enthusiasm. That itself became such an amazing memory for me.
A DIY session at the end of the workshop, I think it's really a stress buster that you get involved, you learn, and you leave the session with a souvenir.
There's so much to learn from so many creative geniuses.
I'm sure it adds a lot of value and provides a lot of insight into the many facets of this industry.
Etsy India team really took on the challenge of making the lockdown successful and informative and educative for all their Etsy sellers.
The entire Etsy team, keep rocking, you guys are doing great.
And thank you for keeping commerce human.
Thank you so much, Radhika. So before Supriya, you take over, I just want to inform the audience that we'll also be for Dr. Doshi, and you can post them in the chat box. We'll take them towards the second part of the session. And just in case anybody's internet goes, so please give the speakers a couple of minutes to join again. Over to you, Supriya, now. Please take it away from here.
Thank you, Sunanda. First, I wanted to start with a little bio on Dr. Doshi, and let me begin. So Dr. B.V. Doshi is one of our country's greatest treasures, noted for his immense contributions towards the evolution of architectural discourse in India. Doshi ji is a pioneer of modernist and brutalist architecture in India. Doshi ji attended the J.J. School of Architecture in Bombay later, but then left in 1950 to pursue an advanced architectural education in London. There he met Le Corbusier and worked in his Paris studio when the master architect happened. There he met Le Corbusier and worked in his Paris studio. And when the master architect happened to be designing a number of projects for India, most notably in the city of Chandigarh, Doshi ji moved back to India to oversee Le Corbusier's projects in the country and finally settling in Ahmedabad. While his early independent projects were highly influenced by Corbusier, but eventually Doshi ji would form his own office, Vastu Shilpa, and craft his own style, combining modern forms and materials with regional influences arising from the environmental conditions and an awareness of how people lived. Doshi ji's noteworthy designs included the IIM Bangalore, IIM Udaipur, NIFT Delhi, Ahmedabadi Gufa, the CEPT University in Ahmedabad, and the Aranya low-cost housing development in Indore, which was awarded the Aga Khan Award for Architecture. He is one of the first Indian architects to have received the prestigious Pritzker Prize in 2018. He was made an Officer of the Order of Arts and Letters, the highest French award for arts, in 2011. He has also been awarded the Padma Shri and the Padma Bhushan. Doshi ji could well be known as an academic urbanist whose simplicity, clarity of vision, and genius remains rooted in empathy and curiosity. One of his students, Jitendra Vaidya, correctly said that Doshi ji could be equally happy giving a lecture to an international academic audience, as well as talking with an experienced builder or sitting on a mud floor with a group of village grandmothers. In all cases, he genuinely cared about the individual person in each situation. He remembered that at lectures, Doshi ji would always sit in the front on the floor, taking careful notes in his journal like an eager student. But Jitendra noticed that what his mentor did next was, we all take notes, but Doshi would go home and connect the dots. This is Doshi ji's power of communication, a power of listening and connecting across cultures, classes, theories, paradigms, and discipline. He is almost a spiritual leader within architecture. Doshi ji is an institution builder, educator, communicator, and visionary. And I'm very, very honored to be speaking to him today. So before I begin, I wanted to ask you one particular question, which I chanced upon in my research. Tell us a little bit about your inner impulse and how it has chartered your life. And you went to school, to JJ School of Architecture, you said by chance. And then from 1951 to 1955, you worked with Corbusier as an architectural apprentice in Paris. And I believe you got the job on a very non-traditional qualification, your handwriting. Please, I know you've probably told the story many times, and before this also we were talking, but tell us a little bit about this experience and your lifelong friendship and learning from him.
For me, everything is a surprise. Every morning I wonder, because I look at the nature all the time and think about the kind of diverse games nature plays. So my life is really connected to essentially curiosity, wonder, and I think that must be inherent since my childhood. Because I was the youngest at that time in an extended family where we must be around 20 people, my grandfather and uncles and my cousins and everybody. So when you are in a traditional orthodox joint family, couple of things are extremely essential, which I think have strengthened my attitude to the way I design. For example, when you are one of them in the 15, 20 people, where do you stand? What do you do? And very often, because I had lost my mother, but my aunt was there, you follow rituals, you follow all the traditional things, you go out and you attend wedding ceremonies and religious ceremonies. So really that is perhaps one of the most essential things that I learned, and that is of the essence of Indian life. the essence of relationships, essence of sharing, understanding one another, tolerance. All those things became for me almost part of my upbringing. So when that happens, sharing is very natural. Good and bad times follow one another, and you always know that someday it will be a good time. So the cyclic order of nature, traveling in villages, going into places where there are no facilities at all, and you attend those wedding ceremonies. I'm talking about something like the 1930s. For you young people, you would not know what it is. The villages are there, the roads are there, the rains come and you can't even go, you have to go by a bullock cart. And the bullock cart goes in its own way, and sometimes, it has all kinds of sounds and movements. Now, all those things, have not left me. They are part of my life. So when you go through all these things, what are the things which we learn? One learns is tolerance. You accept any situation. The second one is cooperation. That means you can adjust to anything. Third one is you will accept uncertainties. Fourth one is you will have to do the best you can, but you are not competitive. You are relating, you are working together. Now, when you do that kind of a thing, then any situation, because I have lived in houses where there is no furniture at all. It's only the daris. Then there are places to sit. At night, you have no beds and mattresses and whatnot. So you put them together and sleep together. So all those things have made me a part and parcel of a larger whole. The other thing that I discovered in the recent time is, we always, in the childhood, in today's times, we give children shoes, clothes, hand gloves, coats, cover. What have we done? We have taken away all their sensibilities. All the sensations which are very, very significant for understanding or listening to the inner voice of your body or spirit, we have already encased it. As a result, what is happening is, where is our sensitivity? Do we know what kind of road it is? Do you know what is hard, what is soft? Do you know what sound it is? You close your ears, you close your head, you close your eyes, and then you are taken into the place where you are given a laptop now. In our time, there was no laptop, there was nothing, there was a slate. And on that slate, you have to write. And then you efface it with your hand or a duster or a cloth. That means, what is your memory? Where do you look at? Now, all those things have made me extremely sensitive. And I think for me, it has been a virtue. Because I have been now working and drawing. So when I started my practice, when I was working with Corbusier, I found the kind of sensibility that he had, I could pick them up because I was exposed to those things. For example, on a tracing paper, if Corbusier picks up a charcoal and starts drawing a line, he's not touching anything, neither his hand nor the charcoal is barely touching the tracing paper. What does it do? It is working with the breath. And that line is effaced, so you don't know where that line has gone. Now, all those things are extremely important, which today they are far removed. They are like a museum thing. So those kind of learning, sense of space, sense of texture, sense of color, sense of relationship. And then when you go to large places or there's no place, you just sit together on the floor. So squatting for me is nothing. Squatting, sleeping, sitting on the staircase and feeling comfortable is not the issue. So all those things, I think, are essential qualities that an architect must know. he must be sensitive to those nuances by which he can discover space. He can understand form, he can understand distance, he can understand texture, he can understand the qualities of surfaces. And then he must understand that formality and informality, order and freedom are all variables. The scales are variables. Now, once you don't know those, because you were closed, you were already encased into something which is predetermined, how does one do that? So it has been my virtue, my advantage of knowing this, so that when I went to Corbusier, then when I went to Europe and then started teaching there, I realized that I have that advantage, that for me a staircase is a very different thing because I climb it barefoot. So if you climb barefoot, you may touch at the end and you may slip, or you may feel the temperatures, or when you hold the railing. So all those things became part and parcel of my life. So for me, space, form, character, structure, or learning and teaching has been like this. So this is really my childhood.
As an architect, I mean, your work is very personal, it's responsive, it's meaningful. You're very aware of the context in which your buildings are located, and your solutions take into account the social, environmental, and economic dimensions. So therefore, your aesthetic is engaged with sustainability, but you don't compromise on the artistic agenda as well. Would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
Actually, sustainability is a word which has come recently.
Yes.
Anything that exists, anything that we use, and if it is used for a long time, we call it sustainable. Whether you buy a fruit or whether you buy pencil or whether you buy a computer, whatever you buy, whatever stage. So really those words I don't know much, but I only know how you connected to them. So for me, sustainability, I would change and say affinity, relationship. And I think those become very important. So when you talk about sustainability today, you are asking a question, is it going to be extension of myself? So is it going to be connected to me? So I call architecture, when we had the exhibition in Delhi, and when we started talking about the exhibition, Kushnu and myself, we talked and then we said that we don't use the word architecture, we use the word habitat. Habitation is what architecture is made. It's come?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
So, habitation is really you are inhabiting inside and outside. So there are memories and there are functions and there is a participation. So a dialogue of participation is an essential part of a living organism. And if that living organism happens to be a dimension or 30 dimension, we call it a architecture, but it is really a building. It is an extension of my body, only that it doesn't speak. But it can be a speaking place. It's silent, it is steady, it is permanent. Yes, but there are those nuances. So if you go and see old houses, if you go and see villages, you will see a lot of platforms, you will see seats, everything made of mud and brick and stone and whatnot. And then they sit on the floor, squat there. So there is an extended relationship with inside and outside, the world in which you live, the place in which you interact, and the kind of dialogue that you would have with those spaces which we call an ordinary building, not even a, we say a hut and whatnot. But when you are sitting on the floor, you get the sense of the surface. When you touch your hands, you can feel that mud or that roundedness of that edge. When you look at the window and if you see there a little image or a light lamp there, in the evening, that little light, it sparkles the wall and the shadows begin to appear. Now all those things, you know, you absorb without knowing. So the first thing that I have learned, and if I tell my students, I say, look at that as extension of your body and your life. Don't look at it as something outside. Integration must come. Relationship must happen. And then you are talking not with that breathing or the element, but you are talking with your whole body. You may not speak, but your eyes will talk to the wall. You may not, but you will hear the sounds. You will hear the different music. You will hear the footsteps. Now, all these are very subtle, but if you are having clothes, if you are wearing shoes, and if you are really not even thinking much, would you have any contact? So first thing that I tell the students and first thing that I talk about myself when I see this is awareness. How aware I am and how much I'm connected and what is that connection to my inner urge. Most important is what is my inner urge? When you have a student or when you go to school of architecture or when you are sitting or when you're walking on a street, are you really connected? So you connect life, you connect your purpose, you connect your activities, you connect your relations, and then you create the whole. Holistic experience.
You've also spoken a great deal about the power of the unexpected. And how has that attitude helped to pave your journey? For instance, when you're creating something, how much control do you exert while you build it or create it? Or do you allow it to take its own shape, as it grows from the ground up?
I have a nice garden in the house. And I look at that garden and then I look at the plants and the way the plants grow. And when I had my grandchildren, I would take them to the zoo. And I would show them not only the zoo, but I would ask them to explain what the zoo had. So gradually you begin to observe that there are many, many things that you can observe. And each one is very exciting. Each one is very different. Each one has a different function. And each one talks about another world which is connected to themselves. Now, all those things are very important. So when I even go to the school or when I go anywhere, I ask them about these questions. And those questions become important. Like when we used to interview the students, long back when I was involved with it, I would say, how many steps did you climb? Or what did you see on your way? Or have you seen something new? Now, I think questions like these are very important because you're talking about perceptions.
Yes.
You're talking about how do you observe and what is your awareness and how you are connected. I think this is something which is very important. So my career began like this and my practice, I follow this. So in designing my buildings, they go through changes and I am looking at them as stories. Let's say I'm doing a house and I'm doing, let's say, my relation's house, the client's house, then I would think about dream. Then I would think about my dream and his dream. Then I would go where it is staying there and then I would wander there. Now I like to wander. I like to meet an accident. I want to meet some people by chance. Or I want to say, look, why are we, if he's working very hard and if he's an executive and he has too much load, I think purpose of an architect is to find a way by which he can recast himself when he comes home and becomes loose and relaxed. So the question is then, can I create another kind of order and a surprise for him so that suddenly he had not expected? So good architecture is an unexpected event. It is like de-releasing, giving a surprise. Conversations become very important when you go into architecture. Why are we not going to a coffee shop and we are relaxed? But when I'm sitting in a sofa, I'm not relaxed because, I'm sitting formally. So the question is, how do you really create dialogue? So architecture and life is essentially connected to inner and combined dialogues. And those dialogues create life. And that life creates celebration. And that celebration has memories. And those memories have affinity.
So beautifully put. It also, I want to talk a little bit about energy. And in all your work, we can see an yearning to stay rooted to where you come from. The courts, the verandas, the garden, the spaces for community gatherings, assembly also. They all form a spine to your designs. And there's a sense of soulfulness, a sensitivity to the environment, and welcoming towards this sort of communal activity. Is it to do with the energy, the memories, all of that that you lend to a space?
Yes, absolutely. I think in design, one has to get into the spirit of things in which, you feel connected. Climate is very important. Breeze is very important. A nice little tree or a window or what is around is very important. So you are looking at architecture not only as an enclosure or a specific space, but you are looking at the world around. I have seen a lot of people coming from the offices, they get tired, and then they want to sit and they're sitting in the sofa and then they sit, they relax like that. It is almost not so relaxed, but they're sitting. Then you ask, and what are they looking at? But suppose that there was a little window and a tree there, and then there was a light, or there was from somewhere, somebody moved from there. Suddenly they will say, oh, what happened? So don't you think architecture must also create opportunities for sudden revelations? The hidden revelations of which we have not been made aware. So relationship, moods, the kind of activities, then the kind of journey that one has inside and outside, I think all this has to come back. And he or she must also feel released. So function is one, additional function and addition to function, and a change to function and curiosity to function is also part of architecture. I think unless that is done, you are not really creating something addition. So idea is when people come from outside and they stay into the house, what is it that made them feel pleasant, fresh? They don't have to find the need of taking a tablet. And they must feel, oh my God, thank God I have come home. What is the idea of home? Where does the home lie in architectural discourse? It is not a building, it is a home, it is the family. So I ask those questions, that you are doing a building, but you are doing a building primarily for beings, human beings. Now, human beings are not in isolation. Human being is in a complete ecosystem. There is a rain. You know how wonderful when the first rain comes. You must be remembering your childhood, yes, that when the rains came, you want to get out of the house and stand and walk or run into that wet place and get wet. Feel the drops of the rain. Now, what about those things? The sound. Where is the sound? The season, the change in the temperatures. We have now electric lights. We never see really the change of the color and the kind of tones of light. Now, architecture, therefore, is life extended. Either the building is talking about extended life, or life is talking about living in relation to the environment in which you are. This is what I think I try.
Beautifully put. I can't not have this question on the Amtavarni Gufa and your beautiful collaboration with Hussain. And it was a beautiful juxtaposition of architecture and art. What gave you that idea?
No, you see, Hussain has been a great friend. We know each other. I mean, now he's not there, but otherwise, a couple of decades. And we would talk. So one day he was telling me I was sitting in the friend's house and it was in the afternoon of May. So he said, "ये तुम क्या करते हो सब? इतनी गर्मी में मकान भी कहाँ ठंडा है, कुछ देखो, ये देखो, कहाँ देखो, ये आर्किटेक्ट के तुम करते क्या हो?" ऐसे मैं भी कुछ करता हूँ, कब एक दिन बात होगी तब बताएंगे. So this is really how we started talking. Then we saw things, and one day he came in the morning about 7 o'clock, and he says, "मुझे gallery बनानी है. I have a gallery in Hyderabad, I have a gallery in Delhi, I have a gallery in Calcutta, I would like to have a gallery, can I get a land?" मैंने कहा चलो मैं बताता हूँ. So I took him, and on the way Piraji Sagra was there, so I took him also, and we went to the site on the campus, and I said, "ये कैसी जगह है, चलेगी?" He says, "All right." But then I said, you are now very, very experimental. And I also try to challenge it. So I want to now have a challenge. So क्या करना है तुम्हें? तो I said, कुछ नहीं है, तुम जो अभी तक किया हो नहीं कर सकते हो. I said, that is my challenge to you. And I am taking the same challenge that I have never had the experience so far. And that is what I will create. That's how the challenges started. And that is how, when the Gufa was going on, he used to come there, sit there. Gradually he came, and once it was over, he came with his friend Harwitz, his collector. And he came with a canvas and he wanted to paint there and then do something. He could not hang this. While it was going on 2-3 years, he had seen the Gufa under process, but he didn't say anything. He says, "ये क्या कर रहे हो?" मैंने कहा तुम छोड़ो ना, बात मत करो. Because I wanted him to really not say anything at all. So gradually we were very close friends. So then I began to do this work, and then he saw the sloping things and curved columns and everything. So he was wondering, and then he came with that canvas. He couldn't put the canvas on the wall. It fell off because it was a round, rough surface, and Velcro doesn't work. So मैंने कहा तुमको पहले ही से बताया ये तो तुम नहीं कर सकते हो. So then after a couple of years, he painted the ceiling. And it is one of the most magnificent work of his ever done, and almost 100 feet long piece of work on the ceiling. So he created that, which meant that I had to give him a challenge. And the challenge is to him and to me that I have not done a space or a building or a structure that I have ever thought of. And so the question was, can I do something which I had a memory of a place where the sadhus stay under in the hills, in the rocks and in the crevices, where you have to crawl and go, and suddenly there is a light. So I thought of light, I thought of space, I thought about movement, and that's what happened, and that's how experiment made. Again, there were tribals. So tribal people came to construct it. And then we painted it, and then the myth was said. And on top, there is a China mosaic. So all the questions that he had asked about temperature, heat control, they were all resolved. But there were so surprises were there of experiences, constantly changing experience. When the sun moves, the light inside the building and the shadows that are cast are constantly changing. And when you walk, you have to walk and be careful how to walk because the floor is not flat. So nothing there is normal. It is made to make you aware with your inner senses and become more sensitive to the normal attitude of a square or a rectangle or a straight or a vertical.
I can see the questions coming on. I will ask you 2 questions before we go on to our viewers' questions. What do you think is the architect's role in society today?
I think give everybody joy of living so that they can celebrate life there. Not a shelter. Celebration of life doesn't happen by just outside. It is participatory. So when you give them, find out how that family will rejoice, how those people would have chats and they can be formal. So there has to be built-in flexibility, built-in connections to the outside world, connections to sky. Even though you are in an apartment, you can always find a way to look at a cloud or a bird. I think those things one is missing. Like every morning I get up, the first thing I do is open the window and look at the sky. And I look at those kites, floating in the blue sky. And then I see those leaves and the flutter of the leaves of the plants. And that makes my day.
What are some of, sorry, go on.
No, that is what I would suggest everybody, every architect must find.
Yeah.
I think that question they must ask. And what is it that would give my people who live there a sense of haunting? I don't want to go from here.
Beautifully put. What are some of the biggest lessons that you have learned?
A lot of lessons. One is that if you want to create, be yourself, have a thick skin, so that all abuses that you will get, you will take them as if you know that they are the gifts from heaven. And third, think about the kind of society that we are building for the future. Whatever I'm doing, is it going to be more useful in the larger context? Is my context narrow, only apartment or series of apartments, or a city, or a town, or a village? And what will I do to our country when I will build? Will it have a dent like other historical buildings that we have? There are lessons in our historical buildings. That's why we go and see them, the kind of setting, the kind of structure, the kind of place, and the relationships. And finally, what kind of communities are we going to create so that there is a harmony, there is joy, and there is meaning of life?
Beautiful. There are a lot of questions over here. I'm going to try and tackle them one by one. Just give me 1 second. So there is Shirin over here who said, can you talk a little bit about urbanism and your views on the temporal structures in cities like Mumbai?
I think these are large questions and large questions. I would only ask one question. Whatever you are designing, whatever you are doing, would you like to live and spend your life there? That would be the first question. Is it meaningful to you, or are you doing something for the client just to get the fees?
There is another question here saying, what advice would you give to architecture students going into their first year this year?
First thing would be that before he goes, the parents should send him to villages and surrounding areas, and then let him really go out and see ancient monuments and then go back. And the sociology, I think, is very important. Social life, social content, and the kind of vision of tomorrow. Because anything we build is going to multiply. Would it affect the whole larger context? See, socially, economically, politically, creatively, we have to expose them and make them interested in.
There is a question here from Smriti who says, it would be very helpful to know what is your design process? How do you look at a space? What feelings went through you when you first saw the space where Sangat was to be constructed?
Well, Sangat was my own challenge for myself because I wanted to create a building which I would like to live there, and relish it. So garden was very important, water was important, the connection to nature was important, ecosystem was important, then the kind of material that I chose, and then of course intimacy, scale, and the kind of privacy or quietness that I would get from inside. It was not done for any outsider to see it or admire it. So it's really an extension of myself.
There is a question here as what would you recommend should be done as a practice for architecture while designing a space, considering this pandemic and the changing time and society in general?
First thing is that whenever you design, you are first of all, you should go into your inner self. So that inner self is like isolation, very similar to pandemic. So I would say that during this period when you are not going anywhere and you are in a flat and you can't even look at a tree and you don't even have any friend, what would you like to do in the building? Would you like a similar building in a modern way so that it can appear to be well finished and you feel your freedom? Or you would like to do something which gives you joy? I think I have written there, Kushnu, we wrote together called Celebrating Life. And I think that's an essential part. How would you like to celebrate your life or your client's life?
There is a very valid question here that says that we hear a lot about the tangible and intangible aspects of architecture. Could you shed some light on these concepts?
No, the measurable and the unmeasurable. Tangible is that, what is functional, what is appropriate, what is minimum efficient. The intangible is the one where you will feel happy to be. All measurables are not necessarily very enjoyable. You are not going into a railway compartment so that your life is moved there. What is there? Railway compartment and my apartment is similar, except maybe it has an elevator and I can go out a little bit here or there. But the balcony, the neighbor, the surrounding, the going upstairs, the terrace, what is it? When I come into the apartment on the ground, what is that like? So the journey is very important. Every day, 24-hour journey, the life cycle, the seasonal time, and how do you constantly feel that you are all the time getting something else? That journey is important. It's not one thing, it's not functional. Ask the student, are you present in what you are doing, and would you like to spend your lifetime there? And would you like to really feel that I am doing something which I am constantly in euphoria?
There is another question here, says from Shruti. That says, as we all know that in urban areas now the essence of nature is missing. How can we implement it in high-rise buildings?
Well, you try and you will find it. We can do it. There are people who have done it. There are a lot of examples all over the world where there are people who are doing gardens on terraces, balconies, everywhere.
So what architectural topics should be emphasized on by architects of this generation, given that we are expected to tackle major environmental issues like climate change and global warming? What are the main aspects that should one focus on, and how?
I think it is not so complicated, whether you are an architect or you are a client or you are a doctor. You don't want to be suffocated. You want to feel comfortable. You want to feel not imprisoned. You want to feel happy. You want to look out. You don't want to get claustrophobic. These are essential things that you must do, whether it is good time or bad time, high rise or low rise. So the word is celebrating moments where there is a dance and singing and music and joy and pleasant company. And wherever you go, you feel not confined. No human being wants to have an enclosed space. That's why the prison cells are made. So architects are making prison cells. This much I can do, leave it or leave it. What is this?
There is another interesting question here, and it says, how would you reinterpret residential architecture in today's context? Do you think that the learnings from vernacular architecture can be reinterpreted in today's context and parameters to generate a new typology of housing?
Why only a housing? What about this medium that we are now communicating? Isn't this freedom? We are sitting in a very different place and connecting the world. Isn't this the best thing that we are doing? Only thing is, if it is hot and humid and sticky, you say, no, let's put a fan or get an air conditioner. I think those questions have nothing to do with life. I am saying every day you must write on your board, I want to celebrate my life, and define that celebration. Relationships, then the conditions in which I work, conditions in which I have a discourse, and finally, am I feeling lighter by the day, not tired?
There is one last question here from a student who's studying at NIFT in Delhi. She said that she loves the campus, and what made you create it in the manner that you have created it?
Well, fashion has no limits. I created all kinds of situations where you can get people there and show them that they are in the snow hills of Himalayas, they are on the terrace, or they are some other place. And I was trying to create for them opportunities to enjoy and rejoice the opportunities that they have, the potentials. And that is what NIFT was supposed to be. It is actually a place where every place has something to offer for an imaginative and somebody who is resourceful designer.
And the last question here, I think it's I'm taking from everyone over here. What would be your word of advice to those who are in the process of studying, who are on their way, there are questions on where they should do internships and how they should follow? What is your advice to students of life? Why architecture alone?
There is one word I always say: live life full size. Be a child of the universe and feel that there is an infinite time, an infinite opportunity, and I would always be enjoying it and be smiling all the time without thinking about anything. So forget about career, forget about everything. And remember, ask them, everybody should know what was their time, when they were 5-year or 8-year-old. They have forgotten it now. Now they have become 40-year-old.
Thank you so much, Doshiji. It has been an absolute honor. It's been a lesson for all of us.
Yeah, thank you so much. You came well prepared, and I think you have
I'm trying. I tried to be a little impulsive. I tried.
No, I think
but if you see the questions that are constantly coming, Kushtu, you should show it to him.
Anyway, so we'll do it some other time again.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. This is probably the most engaging session that I've attended as part of our series. And I mean, it's just so incredible that, you are able to connect with the youth that most of the youth cannot connect. Like I cannot connect with people like they're connected with our audience today. It is just really inspiring. So thanks a lot for being here.
Well, no, thank you for having this session. And I think Supriya was great. Supriya's questions were very good.
Thank you. I live and I'm learning from you every day.
The group is very, very excited. Thank you, the whole group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Supriya. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.